I am here with Beth Norton, the one woman who has like single-handedly changed my life for the better. And it hasn't been one single thing. There have been a couple of things that we've kind of worked on to get me back to where I felt like I needed to be in terms of my mental health, my physical well-being, that type of thing. And it is all related to stress and hormones, we've discovered, which I always talk about how women we all live these parallel lives. And what has worked for me, I know a ton of people can relate and connect to. And so we're just gonna kind of share some information, and hopefully you can seek a provider near you, or if you're close to us, come to Beth. She is right down the road from my house. And when we moved here we live in Wake Forest, North Carolina, it was like 3.5 years ago we figured out, and I literally Googled holistic doctor that takes insurance. Like, that's what I was trying to find, because I knew I didn't need medication. Like, my issues were just like kind of beyond that. I needed somebody to dig a little bit deeper, because all of my panels, or a lot of my blood work and things, I'm fine. But like, you knew me mentally and I was not okay. And so that's how I found Beth. And she was right up the street from me, and I had never, okay, let me slow down. I found her and I had never felt like a doctor like understood the struggles, even though like medically nothing is really wrong with me, but she still felt like she could help me. And I think the biggest relief for me is, I think I was seeking optimization and not just not being sick, because I'm not sick, but I'm not right. And so the optimization piece for me has been life-changing. So I'm gonna let Beth talk for a second, because that's really who we need to hear from. Just a little bit about herself and, you know, what your practice stands for, because it is different than like any other doctor I've been to.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kendra, and little morning coffee that we've had, and little ADD we both probably have undiagnosed, so
yeah, right.
You can slow me down and I'll slow you down when that happens, yeah. And so many great things we want to cover, so we're going to do the best we can, and if I get off topic, you hold me accountable.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the response we've had for this. Kendra and I started talking about doing something like this 2 months ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Just because in my practice, I get a lot of questions, you know, with traditional medicine. I have about 10 minutes of a total visit on face-to-face time with patients, and anybody tuning in who is a patient of mine can understand that. And as I'm trying to slip out the door, I have one more question, and I have to bring you back, and we have to bill insurance again. So it's the constant question of, can we go out for a glass of wine? And I just have so many more questions. So I really do, this is a way to empower people listening on how to investigate some of this yourself, give you a little snippet in some traditional questions. A lot of the questions very much overlapped, and I hear every day. And, you know, then come in and see me, or if there's a provider near you that can help, just how to start this journey. I started my background, I'm a physician assistant, and I started my journey in emergency medicine. I've been practicing now for 23 years. It's crazy to think I'm that old. But I started emergency medicine. I was an independent contractor for 14 years, and pretty much the last 2, near the end of my career, it was just the burnout of, I just can't do this day in and day out. It was the days and the nights and the long 12-hour shifts, and the adrenal fatigue, and the maybe getting 4 hours of sleep, and then having little kids and being off of a night to a day, and just the stress of the job where you're in and out of trauma, and you're coding, or you're putting a chest tube in, and you've got 20 charts in the rack. And I worked in not the hospital infrastructure where, like a WakeMed or Duke per se, where you have every backup that you can imagine. I worked in the smaller hospitals where we had 3 providers running 30 rooms a day, so it was pretty stressful. And in my mind, I thought, well, what else am I going to do? And I was already a business owner, being an independent contractor, and decided I want the patient care. That's what we were missing. I want the follow-up. it was the lack of thank you. You could save somebody's life and you never even heard from them.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
and all that stress, the burnout, the family felt it. So I started this journey. We opened in 2014 as just an urgent care because that's the business I knew was acute care. And we changed the model a year later. And a lot of that was based on the demands of the practice and growing a sustainable practice to an urgent and primary care, which is a little bit strange, I know, in our model when you hear the name, but because we were already branded under Heritage Urgent Care, we kept urgent first, but really we're about 80% primary care and 20% urgent care, so don't let that confuse you. And then in about 2018-19, as providers, we got together, and with my partner, Wendell John, who runs our Leesville Road office in Raleigh, we just started talking about the rise of functional and integrative medicine and how to better help our patients, because we would have a patient who had a vitamin D of 18 and we'd be putting them on 50,000 units of prescription and still couldn't fix their vitamin D or their iron, or constantly talking about gut health but not really understanding how to treat it based on the traditional medicine model. So we started going away to conferences through A4M. It's a fantastic organization that at every conference I go to, it's just building and building thousands of physicians and PAs and nurse practitioners and PharmDs and nutritionists, people just jumping on board on this model. That's how we started the journey. And, right, I guess it was probably about 2019. So we've just been studying and learning it and hybriding it into the traditional medicine track. So some of the questions were, do we bill insurance? Is it all out of pocket? Everything we do is billed through insurance, so you always want to call and make sure we take your insurance. We do not take Medicaid, but we take most commercial insurance plans. If there's other testing that can always be done, and we do some of it, urine Dutch testing, nutrient testing, metal, mold toxicity, SIBO testing, we can get into that a little bit, but those tests are out of pocket. And so for a lot of my patients, we just really need serum labs and get them to understand through the process of listening to where they've been disrupted and what their concerns are, we can fix it without having to do all those other tests. But for some people who are data mine, they want to see what their urine serum metabolites look like when it comes to adrenals and cortisol and hormones and all the other good things it includes. Or if they really do, and we do have some folks that have these weird neurologic symptoms, and the question of even being labeled with early Parkinson's at 38, the question of why can't I feel my right arm? I mean, mold toxicity is a real thing in this country. Mold metals, plastics, we're exposed to it all day, every day. And so for people whose immune systems are sunk and they cannot metabolize it out like most of us every day are exposed to these things, then yeah, we probably do want to dig a little bit deeper than the traditional model, because those are the people, and if anyone's listening, I have some in my practice now that are just put into a box in traditional medicine by maybe their neurologist who didn't even check a Lyme and Bartonella titer to figure out, is this chronic Lyme's disease, and how to make them feel better. So we are a hybrid and a traditional model. And so, yeah. Anything I missed there? Should we start?
No, I don't think so. And I'm already taking notes for myself personally of things, because we've really kind of honed in, and I think it was maybe an easy guess for you, because I would come in and I'm like, I'm just not right. Mm-hmm. She knows I own my own business. She knows I have 3 kids. So she's like, let's check your stress levels and cortisol and things like that. And so, but the mold and heavy metal detoxes and all of that, I've always had interest in it. I don't think I have an issue yet, but because we're exposed to that stuff so much, sure, it's always on my mind and things like that. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've never, I haven't really had to dive down there. So if you are ready, I think we should tackle the 1 million questions everybody submitted to us.
Let's do it. Oh, but you know what I forgot? Yeah. But when we started, how could I forget this? We just posted it. This is Women's History Month. And so I just want to put a shout out to all the women out there who have burned bridges for where we are and the strife to get us to where we are as women. And I just want to say, I appreciate whether you're the mom who's the CEO or the working mom that's just going to work Monday through Friday, the stay-at-home mom, what we do every day. I think we should all give ourselves a pat on the back. So this is our month. That's right. This is our month. Celebrate you. Whatever that looks like, a glass of champagne at 4 o'clock today. It's TGIF somewhere, and however that looks, but celebrate us.
It's true, and I do think women are being much more recognized, but it's still such an underrated avenue of what we go through. It's wild because
still battles.
I am, we can talk about my blood work and my panels and my stress levels were so high, but in reality, I don't live a crazy stressful life. But the day-to-day stuff, particularly for females, especially in my household, the way we kind of like run and function things, it takes a toll.
It takes a village.
And I'm not out saving lives and putting breathing tubes in. I'm like cleaning up scrapes and pee in the bed and things like that, and that stuff can still affect us. And stress can kill. And I know that sounds like kind of like serious and crazy, but that stuff can eat you from the inside out. So
yes. And I think that everybody should recognize, I think as women, to your point, Kendra and I have very similar type A personalities and very hard on ourselves. And sometimes it's just a reminder. And again, you're born with a personality type that you can't change.
Yeah.
And how you deal with stress, you're very right. I mean, stress is at the root of so many of these different disease states that we're going to talk about, and we talk about every day. And really understanding that, to give yourself a break, that it is okay to not be perfect, to, it takes a village when you're mom and you've got the kids at all different ages of life, and how work, not work, I mean, however that looks, running a household, taking care of your husband, I mean, all these things. Sometimes it's taking care of family members, but it's giving yourself, I think, a little bit of that, hey, I deserve a little bit of a break, and to just let yourself
to allow yourself to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
I think before the questions, we should start maybe a little bit of my history, since I've been kind of sharing that on Instagram. Yes. And Beth has been, I refer to her as my wellness quarterback, because I don't know a lot of the science behind it. All I know is how I feel and that it's not right. And so I kind of just dump that information onto you, and then she spits out all of this stuff and terminology, and I'm just like, okay. And I write notes, I send text messages to my mom, we Google it afterwards. But really let's just say 18 months. I think it was like a year and a half. I just felt off. And I hate to bring up COVID, but that time period for us was really intense. My business exploded because, I'm online fitness and nobody could leave their house. And all of my kids were doing school online at home with me. And my husband was gone. He was out of the house, still working in an office. And so that just left a lot for me, which was totally okay because we both had jobs. That's a big thing for us. It changed me because and you had told me something when I was having all of my heart issues, and you said, she said, you can tell yourself anything you want, but your body will always keep score. And I was like, oh my gosh, because it's so true. I can get up and be like, it's fine, and everything's okay. But in all reality, I was not okay internally, and I was just trying to survive the day. And so I think I did myself a disservice, as many of us did, just kind of plow through and survive. And now we're on the other side of it. And now I can kind of take a deep breath, and my body was like, oh my gosh, we are not okay. And so it kind of started with these heart issues, which, full disclosure, I don't have a heart issue. We've discovered I'm just severely dehydrated.
Live to see another day.
Yes, totally. So we went through tons of testing because I kept having these sensations where my heart would expand, and I showed up and I'm like, my chest cavity is going to crack open, it's just getting too big. My resting heart rate is really low. It's kind of always been like that, not in a danger zone, but in the 40s is low, and then it would just skyrocket at these random periods of time, mostly in a state where I was really calm. And that's when you can kind of said to me, you can tell yourself anything you want, but once that fight or flight kind of dropped, that's when my body went haywire, because it's like, we're not used to like slowing down. So I kind of went in with these sensations. I was like, something is wrong. I am dying. And so we did neurology, we did tons of cardiology, all kinds of blood work. And relatively speaking, nothing was wrong with me. And so, which is so good.
Which is frustrating, right?
But yes, I'm like, wait a second, I am not okay. Like, I'm blacking out, I'm passing out, I'm fainting, I'm having all these things. You had to take a knee,
remember? I remember her saying, she's like, I just have to take a knee, which was so cool to hear a woman say that.
Yeah,
say that.
yeah, like you gotta just
take a knee.
And I felt, it was a time period where I was nervous because something wasn't right. And it's no secret in my life, my parents, everybody knew that I was just running at full speed. And they were like, you need to chill. I'm still learning that. But in that experience, I had frustrating weight gain, crazy high stress levels. And then we discovered my progesterone was really, really low. And those things can make you feel really crummy. Yeah, so then once we kind of discovered nothing major was going on, we went into, and we'll get into peptide therapy, because I think that was probably
the game changer for you.
Totally.
Yeah, because Kendra was having more, and for anyone listening who's had this autonomic response, you get labeled as POTS, and POTS, just like fibromyalgia in this country, is a diagnosis that just gets labeled when the cardiologist, you really have nothing else to go with it, and there's a lot of research being done with it and some things they try, but one of the things is putting people on Adderall to try to stimulate but that's like speed. I mean, it's not a solution. So you really, at the end of the day, were just having more of the autonomic nervous response, but you were otherwise healthy. It wasn't because there was and again, these are things we want to rule out. So a cardiac murmur or a defect or neurologic, is there some kind of vascular issue causing this? So that was because we were already on cortisol response, she was on all the supplements. We put you on progesterone mid-cycle. And when we talk about hormones, just FYI, I'm getting ahead of myself, we're talking about bioidentical hormones. So when I say progesterone, I don't mean a birth control pill. I mean bioidentical hormones that are made in a lab exogenously from plants that your body relates to endogenously. It's what we create. So progesterone comes in a capsule, again, plant-based, and for women who are menstruating, they just do it mid-cycle. But it kind of, because women's cycles can really feed into the autonomic problem with POTS. But peptides are the game changer because it's usually an immune modulation, and that's what we're learning more and more about with these autonomic responses.
And this is why I refer to her as my wellness quarterback, because I will take the things that she tells me, but this stuff is just like beyond my knowledge.
Right.
So it's really nice to have somebody who has like this full understanding of what's going on, because all I can describe is my feeling, and then it's your job to like put all those pieces together and then come up with a result. So like I'm so thankful for that, because I am my own advocate, but to do that research on my own, I just don't know enough. So to find somebody like you who can say, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, here's the solution in an organic way, and it's not this, synthetic thing is...
Well, the synthetics won't fix it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think that leads to the frustration, and it led to our frustration to study functional medicine. And that's why all of you have these questions and are tuned in, because you're not getting the answers. Gynecology wants to just give women birth control pills or put an IUD, and the minute you say, am I in perimenopause? Am I bleeding too heavy? Am I having these symptoms? And so if you really, the synthetic, or I have gut issues, let's put people on another acid blocker, aka Prilosec, Prevacid. Do I have patients on those? Absolutely, but they are ruining the gut system, right? So that's the traditional synthetic.
Yep.
And again, I also prescribe traditional medicines just like PPIs I just mentioned, statins, because sometimes we do need them, and sometimes we also do have patients still that we are a traditional model that aren't fully invested in how can I fix this with these other ways? Just give me a prescription and I'll, go on with my
But
life.
the
And that's
hybrid,
okay.
yeah, and the hybrid I think is clutch because I need
you
a Z-Pack every once in a while. You know what I mean?
100%. And it gives people, my job, and I've had this conversation with patients, is I cannot walk out the door without just making sure you have this knowledge. If at the end of the day, you're an adult. And so again, I try to empower patients to understand what we're talking about, and I'll take that extra time. And if at the end of the day you choose to go down the traditional medicine route and not do supplements and not really dive into fixing the gut, and we're really not going to fix sex hormones, including men with testosterone, then that's fine. You've been given the information as an adult. You decide, because maybe it's not for everybody, and it does take some work. It takes some work on changing your diet and fixing it, not through the traditional methods.
Yeah. And while we're talking about that, will you tell us a little bit about Metagenics? Because we've done all kinds of things for me personally, and like my whole neighborhood sees Beth, all of my friends see Beth, and so we're kind of like address at all of those types of things, because that's a great line.
So I won't mention a ton of like the product specifically, but I'll just give you a little background. Metagenics, so when we started this journey, the reason we endorse Metagenics, or at least I tend to more, some of the other providers have some other favorites, because there's great medical companies out there. Pure Encapsulations, Orthomolecular, Nutridyne has good, one of my favorite products I sell, the Mito Recharge, is not from Metagenics, but so we've kind of, played with it a little bit, dabbled, but we looked into these companies because I'll go back and reference the vitamin D still being 18 when we have folks on prescription vitamin D, or they're taking an over-the-counter 5,000 units of vitamin D and calcium. And so when we looked into Metagenics, what I love about that company is you can go on their website, they have double-blind medical peer-reviewed studies. Some of their products, like their specialized pro molecules, which are amazing, we lose those as we age. They are helpful for cancer, repairing oxidative stress and autoimmune disease. And some of the main oncology physicians throughout the country, MD Anderson, Emory, they're using SPMs in their protocols. So medicine's starting to jump on board a little bit, but most of my patients, if you're seeing me versus some of the other providers, that's the company I go to most, and that's why Kendra's referencing it. But when your gut is blown and you feel awful and you want to take a nap at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're talking about leaky gut to leaky brain to adrenal fatigue to nutrient malabsorption. And again, most of my patients who come in are taking some form of a vitamin or some form of I read vitamin B would be helpful. They're typically over the counter, and they're not working, versus when they go on supplement treatment protocols, which is part of personalizing your medicine, you feel different, you have more energy. We fix the adrenal fatigue is a real thing, and that comes from the high cortisol state. That's why she mentioned Adricet. If you don't fix that, and again, fix the gut first, then it's really hard to fix everything else on the back end.
Yeah.
So the supplements are a big part of it. And I won't go into too many specifics on products, because everybody's a little bit different on what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important because I was coming in with like all kinds of random issues, and she went straight to my gut, and that helped a lot.
Yes.
And so I feel like that helped me kind of get back to like maybe my baseline.
Yes.
And then we were able to kind of take it up a notch with the peptide therapy and things like that.
Yeah.
And I've never felt better.
Yeah.
I sleep well, which I've always slept really well, but maybe too good. And now I can sleep well, wake up. I'm waking up at like 5 o'clock without an alarm, which is crazy, because like I would be dragged out of bed at 7:05 on a normal day. So the optimization, we had to get me to my baseline. And then I was like, no, I'm not done. Like, what else? And the optimization of peptide therapy and things like that have been, I feel like I should feel.
Yes.
I don't know. Like,
I
can't believe I felt so crummy for so long, thinking, I'm fine. It's fine. Yeah.
But that's the story, right? Is we as Americans are so busy and live this rush life. And I don't know about you, but my husband would tell you that I don't know how to relax. Even when I'm on vacation, I don't know how to relax. So, you would probably agree with that.
Totally.
You're very high energy like myself, which is what's been so enjoyable at two women in two different seasons of multiple different seasons. And that's the great thing too, that you can hone in on as a woman. Understand a woman in her 20s is going to be in a different season than a woman in her 30s and a woman in her 40s, a woman in her 50s to menopause, and how that looks and the different challenges that your body will go through.
Yeah.
But it's great that as women we can collaborate, and I can see somebody in Kendra's age, or I can see my menopausal woman and how to fix the different issues. So,
by the way, when my mom is in town, like she goes, it's wild. Like it's yeah, and it's, you know, there's so many correlations, but the categories and the seasons
can be different.
And it's crazy to see what works for certain people and things like that. So, okay, we got a ton of questions, and so I originally was like, maybe this will be 2 parts. This might be like 3 parts, because I'm not sure we're going to sit down and watch like a 3-hour video. So we'll do our best to kind of keep it in categories, and then you can kind of tune in on what kind of relates to you the most. How responsible is my hormone balance for the quality of my skin, hair, energy, and diet?
Yes. So hormone balance is very important, but it's not just your hormones. If you feel like your hair is dry or you're losing hair, your skin is dry, you're losing collagen, and what was the third part of that? It was skin, hair, and nails.
Energy and diet.
Yeah, energy, diet. It's not just because my hormones are off. So we did receive a lot of questions about, I feel like my hormones are off. I feel like it's usually when patients come in, it's the 2 chief complaints. It's, I feel like my thyroid is usually my thyroid is off, or I feel like my hormones are off. And yeah, both probably are off when you're feeling this way, but it's not just about that. So what we would want to do is, the first thing I'm going to ask is about the gut, because if you fix leaky gut syndrome, which again, most people tuning in can appreciate this, even if you eat relatively healthy, if you're feeling bloated, if you're gassy, if you're not having good bowel movements at least once to twice a day, a little early to talk about the poop, I know, but that's a part of it, because how do we excrete bad things in our body? Through our gut, through poop and pee, right? Yep. And so if you're not methylating well and excreting, and things are being recycled in your body, sometimes 2 to 3 times, like let's take estrogen, for example. Estrogen is broken into 3 parts. And there's one that's really bad. Your estradiol is your main functioning estrogen. That's the one we replace when we need to with bioidentical hormones. Then you have E3. E3 attributes a little bit more to the vaginal lining, but when you have estrogen or estrogen dominance, because this is, your gut's all off, the hypothalamus, serotonin, I mean everything, adrenals are fatigued, and you're not methylating and excreting well, that estrogen lives in tissue. And the more weight you're gaining, those are the women who are really predisposed to breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer. And it doesn't have to be a genetic where you've tested positive for BRCA. These are hormone-based cancers. So, just really understanding, again, why we come back to fixing the gut and fixing the brain, because leaky gut and leaky brain, our nervous system, they go hand in hand. And then the adrenals are a big part of that. So by fixing the gut, eating well, lots of cruciferous vegetables, a good probiotic every day. Some of my patients have such bad gut disease, they need prebiotics, postbiotics. There's peptides to help with this. But fixing all of that, and then in turn, if we need to fix hormones, we do. But often, and again, we come back to nutrient supplementation, making sure there's enough methylated Bs on board. So it's all important, but you might be barking up the wrong tree if you're struggling with some of those things, like the hair loss. And again, progesterone's an amazing hormone that gets left on the side. It has a lot to do with libido, hair, skin, sleep is a big one with progesterone. Estrogen protects everything else, which is your eyes and your heart and your bones when women are starting to hit menopause and heading into osteopenia. So, and testosterone is really helpful for libido, and just some different things. I won't get into all the dynamics of hormones. But
so that brings me to my second question that I'm reading is, when should females test for hormones?
Yes.
What age? How often?
Right. So that was an interesting question. Hormones are not in a routine panel. insurance will not cover that. You have to have codes for insurance to cover hormone testing, and nobody really looks at hormones if I'm doing an interview with a patient and they say their menses is normal and they're feeling fine, because again, not everybody's unhealthy, then I don't need to check hormones. But if we have some of the other symptoms or syndromes that we're talking about, then you would check hormones. So it's not an applicable test that is done at, say, hey, just like at 21 you get a pap, right? And 45 you get colon cancer screening. It's just not like that. So it's tested on a need to need.
So could somebody go in and say, I want to do a hormone panel?
You can, but you need certain codes. If you're trying to get insurance to cover it, there has to be reasons. But usually if you want to do a hormone panel, it's because something's off and I can find a reason to code for it.
Yeah, okay. This one says, does your provider test baseline hormones first? What tests do you use? Saliva, blood, urine?
Yeah. So I personally do a lot more serum testing because it's just more affordable, and insurance usually does cover it until the day, and that may come because every year it's a struggle with insurance. They say, we're not covering hormones anymore. Then saliva and urine Dutch testing. We do Dutch testing. I have people who come in who've seen other functional medicine providers, and I'll look at their testing for them. The problem with the Dutch test is it gives you information, but you cannot treat off of the urine metabolites. So it really needs to be the saliva that we do. We use ZRT for that, or serum, but I rarely need it. Usually I do serum testing. If you are on hormones, that's where meaning birth control, or you have an IUD in, it can make the reality of that test, any hormone testing, a little difficult because you're suppressing your estrogen and progesterone natural levels. So
this question is, what's the best thing to do if your body's feeling off? So if I showed up and I said, my body's feeling off, what's the first thing you're thinking?
Right. So I want to know more. I mean, that's a very general category, right? So because feeling off for you, and in my mind, me feeling off might be two different things. So it's just back to what we do as providers, where it's the interview process on, okay, tell me what that means. Feeling off, is it you can't sleep, you're exhausted, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're having gut health issues, you're losing hair, you're flagging eczema, psoriasis, whatever that means.
Okay. So this is like a couple of questions, but in terms of hormones and weight gain. So from my personal experience, I have struggled for 18 months with this fluff. I eat clean. We all know I exercise. I sleep really well. My one thing that I never could kind of gain control is my stress levels. I can stress myself out, which makes me a really good business owner because I create a lot of work. Yes. But I can stress myself out. And so weight gain in hormones, is that always hand in hand?
Not always, but it can be. So again, weight gain is a prodigy of cellular responses off. Mitochondria, I kind of haven't even addressed mitochondria yet, but they are the most fascinating cells that are in our body. And if you read about mitochondria and understand what they do, we talk a lot about it in the office. They are your soldier cells. They are your immunity. They are where all the conversion comes through for your sex hormones and for cholesterol and melatonin for sleep. That's a hormone. And they also deal with your immunity when you get sick, and glucose. So when we're talking about weight gain or possibly some insulin resistance happening, I think there's enough verbiage in the media about insulin resistance. I do have people coming in who question that and understand it a little bit more. But if you're not pumping insulin out and pushing glucose into the cell, and the cellular response isn't working well, and the mitochondria aren't working well, and they're sunk a little bit, which comes back to, again, the nutrient and cellular response, the gut, the hypothalamus, all of that, you're going to gain weight. The hormones play into that because, again, if the mitochondria aren't well for all the things we're talking about, you're not having good sex hormone conversion. And so we address that on how to fix all these problems, which in turn leads to better conversion. And please understand, this is astounding when people hear this. They look at me, the deer in the headlights, like, what are you talking about? Your gut, one, is the biggest organ in your body, but there's a good portion of hormone conversion that happens in the gut. It's not just in the ovaries. It's not released just from the pituitary, and then it's just not in the gonads, testicles. And so when you fix the gut, hormone conversion happens. That's why women who have hysterectomies and oophorectomies, so everything's gone, they still create some hormones because it's not just coming out of their, women parts. And so, it all ties together. It's not, you can have normal functioning hormones and still gain weight, or not gaining weight but have hormone dysfunction. If they don't always play hand in hand, it's usually what's happening with the rest of the body.
How off do your test results have to be? Because there's like a normal range. So even if I'm high but still normal, you'll pick up on that. Like, yeah, it's a little higher. Like, so how off can you be?
Yeah.
Is it small and still have an effect?
You can, and everybody's a little different. Meaning, we'll go to hormones. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, in this country is not. It has a label, but can sometimes be hard to diagnose. It's not all put into a box where one test picks it up. And let's say a woman has low, so often what you see with PCOS, and these women often do gain weight, and they may have had a hard time conceiving because their progesterone dips, and they have to go on progesterone to maintain the egg and the uterine lining. But their testosterone is usually elevated, and their progesterone is often low. But their testosterone might just be 42, or 45. It may not be super high, or the progesterone could just be moderately low, but there's still this imbalance. Thyroid is a good example when you talk about testing parameters, where the TSH, you really want it to be around 2 to be functional. So what a lot of providers do is, one, they don't really dig too deep into thyroid antibodies and other thyroid panels. That's a big default in traditional medicine, because you'll miss Hashimoto's thyroiditis and autoimmune thyroid disease every day of the week and twice on Sundays if you're not. But with the TSH, a lot of providers will say, oh, it's 0.98, it's still in a normal range, or it's 3.5, it's still in normal range. Too low or too high, is still, there's stress on that thyroid. And again, the stress may have come from, we have the gut issues first, and then we had all these other issues in the body, and now the thyroid's under distress. So I want a TSH to be about 2, which is mid-range. And so yes, when you look at lab values, we have this normal, because you have to have a scale, right? And you're going to have a variance, just like on a growth chart.
Yep.
If you have too many obese kids, they're going to make the little kids who otherwise would have been normal 20 years ago hanging on by their nails on a growth chart, because you have a variance on what's happening in society. And our lab values, honestly, it can be a little antiquated in the sense that they have not been changed since maybe some of them 1980s that we're still running. So it's just the knowledge base that we're coming up with on the understanding of how we interpret them.
Isn't that crazy? And
yeah, 100%.
This brings me, so my boys, my husband is Filipino, so my boys are mixed race, and my youngest is little. And it always made me so nervous because on all of those charts and those, things that he's supposed to meet, he's just small.
He's just small. And look at the parents, right?
And look at the parents.
Right.
And so my husband's cousin, who is a pediatrician, and so I sent her everything, and she is also Filipino, and I'm like in a panic. And she is like, you can't go off. These are like Midwestern white boys that they're evaluating. Like, you can't relate Rowan to these types of, like, we're not all created equally. And having known that,
which we've lost perspective of in this country,
is such a sigh of relief, because I'm like, he doesn't need to be this like strapping young boy who's like related to a kid from Ohio. He's a small Filipino kid. So 100%. And he's still perfectly fine and healthy. He's so scrappy and tough. Like, so anyway, it's
it's just the variance, and
there's a variance,
and it's the same way with lab values, and it's you're going to have some, and again, there's even a variance on the low side of labs and high, meaning somebody might always have a hemoglobin that's 0.2 lower than your normal hemoglobin values, but that doesn't mean that they have cancer or that they are anemic or iron's normal. I mean, it's just how their body mechanics are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's nice to compare yourself to yourself and not to all of these other things.
100%, yes.
Do you feel like HIIT workouts, which stands for high intensity interval training, are more harmful to your hormones and health?
Yeah, I saw that question. I thought you could weigh in on this because
I
of
do
your
think,
background. Tell me what you think.
I think living a low impact lifestyle is always going to be more sustainable on your joints, on your bones, all of those types of things. I do still think that weight bearing exercises are important for bone density and things like that.
Yes.
But if you are going balls to the wall and your hormones aren't right, especially for females, I think it's detrimental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree. This is it's kind of a loaded question, to be honest, because it really depends on the person. And this is man or woman, because I know we're talking a lot about women here, but I have men who equally have a lot of the same problems. What I would say about working out is a lot of this depends on an underlying makeup, which sometimes we can find through testing. If you are fatigued and you're waking up exhausted and you're like, I can't lose weight, I'm gonna keep pushing myself through, I'm gonna jump on the Peloton, I'm gonna go to CrossFit, I'm gonna go run 3 miles, and you're exhausted, dude, that means something's going on. It's typically high cortisol, right? So the stressed person all day, every day, like you said, exhausted waking up, pushing themselves through a workout, exhausted afterwards, you are doing more harm than good to your body, and it really creates a lot of inflammatory response. And so what I would say to that person is, if that's how you're feeling, 1, come see me so we can figure this out, but 2 is meditate, box breathing, some stretching, like something very low key, because you do not want to blow through that high cortisol state because it's making it worse.
Yep.
Now, if your body is even keel, like again, we are all made up differently. Marathon runners love to run. If they feel good doing it, do it.
There's no way they feel good doing that. There's no, I won't believe it.
I'm a runner, but probably never doing a marathon, just saying. But that's okay, right? Because there are, look at this, people from Kenya. My goodness, they run all day long to school, to work, to everywhere. Yeah, CrossFit, I mean, my husband is a big CrossFitter and that works for him. I personally, for me, what works for my body is I do kind of interval training, and I'll do, a little stair stepper. And as I've gotten older, I used to run longer. I run for maybe 10 minutes, and then I do weight resistance training is important. And it's really important for the woman. That can be life-changing for her body.
Yep.
And for how you're feeling on not being able to lose weight. I know that sounds weird, that you think you have to just push cardio all day to lose weight. That's not always true. And sometimes it's even mixing it up where you're meditating one morning for 20 minutes, or at least once throughout the day, and box breathing and working out the next day. So it really is just, if you feel good doing what you're doing, great. If you feel exhausted and your joints hurt, absolutely.
And you're not seeing results, so that's a lot of times people's results will flatline because they're just they're going too hard, they're not listening to their body. And I do think cross training is important.
Yes.
So you don't have to just do bar, you don't have to just do CrossFit. Cross training and keeping your body on its toes will go a long way. Yeah.
So I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think there's definitely pros and cons to both, and it just really depends on you and your makeup and where where you are in the game of how your body is feeling.
Yeah. So moving from exercise to eating, and this is a big question that people had because they know where I have been: hormones and intermittent fasting.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting. You just have to be careful with it. Again, a lot of the sustainability comes from somebody's makeup on, again, I'm not going to dig too deep on the mechanics of it, but if you fast past 14 hours, you have to be a little careful with that. So you're going to hear a lot of programs out there, keto diets, all that good stuff. Once you're past 14 hours, your body kind of does the opposite, and it goes into a hydrolysis state of we're starving. I think fasting is very sustainable. I talk to a lot of my patients about this. If you can't lose weight, start fasting after 7 p.m. If you can make it till 9 a.m., that's 14 hours of fasting. You're sleeping. If you don't eat after 7, you're burning, your body is burning metabolism all night. So, and you sleep better, as well as getting, rid of inflammatory foods. But fasting that way is great. Now, if you want to fast until lunchtime, that's okay. A lot of people do that, or maybe 11 o'clock. Sometimes just even having a protein shake in the morning is good. But you can alternate fasting. So it might be, hey, I ate really bad the night before. I'm going to fast today for sure until 12, 1 o'clock. Or I'm going to do a 1-day fast. But some of these programs that are like 18 hours on, 14 hours on, and they're alternating, they're really tough. Keto diets are another one that I think there was a question in there about keto. Keto green, I'm good with. Keto with fish and vegetables and 5 colors of the rainbow, lean protein, low carb, low fat, I'm great with. You will burn energy, you will feel better, you'll lose weight. But if you're on a keto diet that's heavier, like high fatty meats, fatty keto, it can be really hard on the woman's hormones if it's not done right, and it's not sustainable. Being in a ketotic state is sometimes helpful though, because one, bacteria hate it because there's no glucose to feed off of, and they're lazy. They want easy, simple sugars, right? So that just, kind of getting into a whole nother dynamic there. Yeah. But being on those kind of diet infrastructures of low carb, low fat, low added sugar, low gluten, higher lean protein fish, Mediterranean kind of style is always going to be healthier.
And I think people always think of the fasting time, but don't forget about your feeding window. And I think that's what messes with me a lot is I could fast all day long, which can be scary, but you have to intake the same amount of calories as you would on a normal day.
Yes.
Your feeding window has just gotten smaller. And that's what I couldn't keep up with. There's no way I can keep up with eating that much food in such a short amount of time.
Right.
So I was basically like fasting and then like eating some and just fasting, which is an eating disorder. And that, I think that was a big, I think that kind of kicked everything out of whack for me because I'm intermittent fasting, like this is, and you feel so good, and the energy levels are like, you can't compare to them. But if you don't get enough calories in that feeding window, that's going to screw you up big time.
It is, and fasting, like I said, alternating is always a good idea. So that's safer, like meaning you have 1 day or 1 day a week. You say, I'm going to fast, I'm not going to eat until 4 o'clock. That's something like that's okay. You just have to be really careful about past 14 hours. And for a lot of people who are out, like you need mind power all day, the brain functions off of glucose and food and the breakdown, it's just really hard. So nighttime fasting is always great, and you definitely will see usually a difference. The weight will start coming off a little bit. Yeah.
In the essence of time, because we could talk all day about this stuff, I still want to hit a little bit on peptide therapy because I think that's been a huge... I always talk about struggling to move the needle, and my needle was like with these peptides. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So we'll sum it up because peptides are helpful for everything we're talking about. And what are peptides? And then, like we said, we will do another chat, and we'll do, because we had so many questions. It was so impressive. We could spend hours doing this.
Seriously.
And if I had hours, I definitely would
I'll nail her down again. Don't worry.
Love to keep talking. Yeah. So peptides are amino acid snippets that you have in your body naturally. And what happens as we age, from about puberty on, our thymus gland that sits in our chest shrinks, and we start losing these amino acids. Our T cells with thymus gland shrinking, our immunity changes, specialized promolecules, which I mentioned earlier for Metagenics, we lose those as we age. We lose oxidative stress repair, the telomeres lengthen. And so peptides are on the market now. So many of you probably know what insulin is. Insulin is a peptide. Lisinopril for blood pressure is a peptide. But the peptides we're talking about have been around for a long time. Europe has used these for years and years. There's a lot of people in America using them. And they're definitely coming more to market. I think they're in the media a little bit more. What are peptides? Be very careful, because after today you may start searching and you'll look at websites that look glamorous, and you don't need any kind of prescription, and you can get BPC-1. I just had a patient the other day where her husband was getting BPC-157 on an unknown website. These are, in order to get peptides, you should need a prescription, or it should be managed by a provider. These folks are making, who even knows, out of a garage. Who knows what formulation or what kind of chemicals are being put in there. And you're injecting these into your body. Some are oral, but just be one, even with epitalin. I couldn't believe this, that somebody could get epitalin. Epitalin is one that should resonate. It's the largest anti-aging peptide on the market.
Why am I not on that?
Because you're beautiful and don't need it.
No,
however, am about to inject myself with it. But you have to inject for 10 days. You can only do it twice a year with an IM injection. IM means intramuscular. Nobody, again, you need to know what you're doing, but I could not believe these are on these websites. SARMs, I could go on and on. So please do not if you are interested in peptides, come see me, or find a provider near you that is certified in peptide therapy. Yes, because you need a prescription and it should be managed. The only downside to peptides, again, this is another reason, it is stated the only negative side effect, they are very safe, is if potentially you have a brewing cancer that you don't know about. And those are things we'd want to work through. Like if you've had ongoing shoulder pain, I don't want to start you on peptide therapy that'll fix the shoulder pain until I know that I've done an x-ray and there's no osteosarcoma there. So either which way, they can possibly promote angiogenesis, which can, feed a tumor. Possibly. It's not that it's really been documented, but it's hypothesized. So that is a caution on peptides. Peptides most often are injected. They're sprays. There are oral peptides and peptides for different things. If we could get the FDA and Big Pharma out of the way, we have peptides that could be fixing traumatic brain injuries and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, cerebralizin. The thymogen peptides are amazing for the immune modulators for COVID, post-COVID. BPC-157 is one that you're on. We talk about that one a lot. It kind of does everything. Gut, we can heal the gut with it. CJC is another one we talk a lot about in our practice, probably two of my favorites, because it is not a growth hormone, but it stimulates your growth factor. And so all these, the ones that I'm specifically speaking about, BPC, CJC, epitalin, KPV, they all have anti-aging effects. They have weight loss effects. You, as women, we also often notice, and this is kind of where you were, and again, weight loss is different and variable per person. For Kendra, it might have been, and for me, I just want to get 5 pounds off and build muscle versus my patient who really needs to lose 40 pounds. And then for major weight loss, we're also talking about semaglutide is one we do a lot in our practice for weight loss, or Wegovy or Manjaro if we can get it filled, but GLPs can be helpful. But yeah, peptides, they're anti-aging, they help with skin, they help build collagen, they fix your gut, they fix autonomic POTS problems, autonomic nervous problems. They're immune modulators for folks fighting chronic Lyme's disease or neuropathy, or you can really fix disease states with these, and you can be on them forever. There's no harm. Some of it's cost, so it can sometimes be a little cost prohibitive for people. But if you love them, what a lot of my patients do is cycle on 3 months, off a month. Your signals respond better. But that's really what's happening is you're turning signals on, and depending on your age and your growth factor, you may notice a difference in a couple days to a week. Or when I started injecting with peptides February a year ago, and then I went through the certification process with A4M, and I love them. I play with some different ones. I don't always do BPC and CJC, but washing on and off is helpful. And so, I started injecting for all of those reasons. And, libido's another one, menopausal symptoms, hot flashes, and it's just really interesting. Pain's a big one. For me, I was having you know, again, the oxidative repair as we age, we lose it. And I won't say my age, but I am older than Kendra. And I had plantar fasciitis I couldn't get rid of. I had lumbar back pain radiating down my leg. I was seeing, you know, my buddy who's a physical therapist, my friend who's a chiropractor. I'd be coming into work putting an ice pack on my back after going to my chiropractor, and it just, I couldn't fix it. So peptides went away like that. And I've had multiple people in my practice who the pain syndrome, gone, just completely gone. It's amazing.
And that's BPC 157?
BPC 157 works for pain. There's a couple other ones, but the reason I like BPC and CJC together is because CJC stimulates BPC to work better. And they just, but I have some folks, again, it's combination therapy, which is what we talk about in the office, who for weight loss, if they can afford all three, that is a robust treatment, CJC, semaglutide, and BPC. If they can't, sometimes it's just BPC 157 and semaglutide, and it's amazing for weight loss. You know, we still can get Wegovy, and Mounjaro's kind of been on back order, but so I've got some patients that are still on both of those if we can get it covered.
So I remember when I first got on these, she had said, like, with the BPC 157, like, if you have, like, my hip, my low back, something like that, you can inject in that spot.
That's right.
And I fell off my husband's truck. It's been four weeks in a couple of days, so like 3.5 weeks.
For those who follow Kendra, you might have seen her posting in our
ridiculous
in the pretty blue shorts, getting an X-ray.
Getting an X-ray. Yeah. Oh my gosh, those shorts are kind of cute actually.
Yes.
But I started moving those injections more towards my low back, and I swear between that and an infrared sauna, within 2 weeks,
it's gone.
It was gone. Yeah. Like my pain, and I could still feel like the bone bruise of it all, but I thought I was going to be out for 8 weeks, like flat on my back, and I guarantee, and I did, of course, everything else, massage, dry needling, chiropractor, all of those types of things, but those two things I really think made a huge difference. Let's talk about cost a little bit, and then we'll kind of wrap it up, because I know that's a big question for people. We do everything in 3-month increments. Is that how it is everywhere?
Okay. That's just because that's how you do it.
Okay.
But, so you can do month by month. The cost of some of the orals are a little cheaper than injectables, so maybe $120 versus $180. There's a variance in cost. We'll just use BPC and CJC since we mentioned those two. You're looking at about $180 per month for each one. And so a lot of folks do just order a 3-month supply, and if you have an HSA or flex spending, you can use that in our office. I have plenty of people who do that. And then you can wash off. So, and again, if you even want to take 2 months off and go back on. So yeah, cost prohibitive. And those are, I mean, we've got some that are a lot more expensive, and then, you know, there are some, like I said, oral that can dip into the $80 to $100 range if I'm thinking about it correctly. But yeah, it's just, you know, they can be costly, but if you have an issue that you want to correct, you may just even want to try them. What will happen when you go off? Your signals don't turn off immediately. It takes a little bit of time, but you typically will go back to where you were. But if you've built some collagen in your skin, and people notice, I mean, you will notice drastic changes, that doesn't go away. And again, keeping up with other things. So. And
you've always told me to pair collagen with peptides.
That's like collagen and amino acids, which we can talk about at another time.
Yeah.
But they definitely have a player. Amino acids have a player, and for weight loss and for gut health and holding bonds together. Amino acids hold peptides together naturally in your body. So, and collagen supplements do too. Collagen has its own form of peptides. That's why you'll see the powder sometimes that says collagen peptides. We've got some different formulations I recommend on that end, but yeah, and there's peptides just for skin, for hair growth, all of it. But I think the biggest closing I would say is when we're talking about these things, or you come to see us in our practice, what you get is regenerative medicine, and that's, I think, the difference that has led us down this path on why we do what we do, how Kendra ended up with me. Patients in my practice would agree with that, and so it's really the golden life is my goal for my patients and myself and my family is to live this really long, healthy life. We have one life to live, right? And if you're crippled with arthritis at 50, or walking with a cane when you're 60 or Alzheimer's at 70, what's the point? So there's blue zones that we're doing research on in this country, or not our country. Our country has two outside this country on why in their ecosystem people live to be 100, have no disease, are happy, are healthy, look good, are active. So that's really our goal. And that's, my job is to educate you on how to do it. And we have these fabulous things that have been around, and 33 countries have hormones, bioidentical hormones, on formulary in socialized countries because they know they work. In our country, many people who practice women's health just say, you're in menopause, you don't need hormones anymore. I can tell you that if I need hormones, I will be on hormones until the day I die.
It's true. Like, gone are the days of like feeling okay. Like, we are now seeking greatness. It's
right.
It's true. Like, the
And feel great.
optimization.
Why shouldn't
yeah,
we, right?
why not? Like,
why
I don't
not?
want to just be okay.
Yeah. You should still want to have, love your husband and want to be active and not come home at the end of the day when you're 50 and 55, or I have to retire at 60 because I just have no brain power anymore. And that's the other thing about peptides I would mention. Significantly, people always notice, me included and you included, is the energy.
It's wild.
You can work out longer. You come home at the end. I'll work an 11-hour day sometimes and still have energy at the end of the day.
Yes. I've actually been talking about that with my friends because I'm almost bored because I'm usually in bed. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm so awake.
Yes.
Which is awesome, but I've had to kind of adjust a little bit because me and my bedtime, I'm big into sleep. And I just don't need it. It's crazy.
But you do sleep, so not to mean they don't cause insomnia. Actually, CJC, you will sleep better on CJC.
My quality of sleep, because I'll sleep with my watch every now and then, and I get way more good deep sleep.
Yes.
Did you know that BPC is nicknamed the Wolverine peptide?
No, do tell.
No. So one of my friends texted me and was like, hey, do you know anything about the Wolverine peptide? And I was like, I've never heard of it. That's so weird. I Googled it. BPC 157.
Because they're using it, or?
So one of their doctors had said, maybe you should get on it. She had a bad fall. So maybe think about the Wolverine peptide. And I was like, what? And I was like, wait a second.
Where does Wolverine come from, do you think?
Because we're now Avengers. I think it just because...
The Wolverine, the Avenger. I'm thinking of college sports here, or college.
No, I don't know. We need to look into it. But I instantly went to...
Let's look into this.
The superhero, the Wolverine, of just
our brains. I'm going to college sports. She's going to. I do love some Marvels and Avengers.
Yes,
and I
so
do love those.
we need to look at the backstory of that. But I was like, wait a second. If it's BPC 157, I'm on it, and it is incredible. And so it literally, we can all be superheroes.
Yes, for sure. You'll feel like a superhero. And wound healing. I mean, we mentioned the pain syndrome, but wound healing, it's amazing. You can take a scar that is awful from maybe a Mohs surgery or a cut, and you can inject right around that with BPC 157. And
oh my gosh, so I'm going to ask you one question and then we're going to end it, and I don't even know if you should answer it. C-section scars?
Sure, why not? I mean, it's a scar. I would think absolutely. Yeah. And there's other...
Ooh, that's going to be big for my girls.
Okay, it's worth a try.
Yeah,
you get the benefits from you'd still get all the great benefits from BPC and all the other things we're talking about, and by injecting around it, that's what it does on a traditional scar that's 2 to 3 layers deep. So I don't see why C-section. Okay. One thing we didn't mention in the morning, and again, this is a pilot for us. This is the first time we've done it, and we hope to keep it going once a month, and maybe we'll do a happy hour Thursday one day. We'll all have a glass of wine or champagne while we're doing it. But we probably will go live at one point. We'd love some feedback. Full disclosure, this is not medical advice. So if you have questions, talk to your provider or come see us. This is not, this is a talk and answer session.
A learning opportunity,
but just not official medical advice. So,
yes, she is not your doctor.
That's
Fine.
right. That's right.
She is
That's
not.
Right. Full disclosure.
No. Okay.
Yes, awesome.
I think you're amazing.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will do this again soon.
Yes, we will.
Awesome.